Hi, I'm Femi OK, and you've been in the stream for 5 years. Today, to mark that anniversary, we're bringing back some very memorable guests. Since the very beginning, the stream has always been a platform for you to interact with artists and celebrities, politicians and intellectuals. So stand by for 3 very special guests. Malika Bilal is our digital producer. You've been here for how many years?
Almost 5.
Wow, okay, almost since the beginning.
Thank you for dating me.
All right, I don't think we've done anything quite like this before, though.
No, this is a first, and so it's got our community kind of excited.
Nice.
So we asked them, has there been an episode of the stream that's ever made you change your mind on a subject? This is one response from Pierre, who says, not so much changed my mind as much as informed me on something I knew very little about and inspired me to do further research. I can almost promise you that's going to happen on today's show. So we want you to tweet in on this conversation. You can also tweet your questions with #AJStream. But first, here's a few other guests you may remember.
We're so thrilled you could make it. How you doing, Elmo?
How are you? This is Brother Cornell West, and remember that justice is what love looks like in public.
Yeah, I'll see you guys soon, hopefully.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Jimmy Carter, and I'm in the stream.
Now on to today's guest, British comedian, actor and future politician Eddie Izzard. He's joining us live from London. Hello, Eddie.
Hello.
Malaysian Member of Parliament and People's Justice Party Vice President Nurul Izzah Anwar. She joins us from Kuala Lumpur. Hello, Izzah.
Hello.
And American journalist Glenn Greenwald is the co-founding editor of The Intercept. That's an online news platform. He joins us from Rio de Janeiro. Hello there, Glenn.
Hi, how you doing?
All right, so Eddie, let's start off with you. I'm going to show you something that I'm sure that you must remember. And this takes us back to South Africa about a month ago. And you are finishing a marathon, but not just one. You did 27 marathons in 27 days. I think you look spectacular considering what you did to your body. How are you feeling now?
Bizarrely, I feel fine. I'm not quite sure why, but I did. If people don't know, 7 years ago I ran around the United Kingdom, so I ran 43 marathons in 51 days, but I had a day off a week, so it was a different thing that I did, but it was these marathon distances, 42 kilometers, 26 miles. The one I did in South Africa was 27 miles. Was 27 marathons in 27 days with no days off, except I had to take a day off to go to hospital on the 5th day and on the 6th day, actually. They were checking out my kidneys, but my kidneys were actually all right, but it was my hydration. But anyway, my body came back this time much quicker, and I think it was last time everyone said, your body's going to fall apart, or it's going to be weird, and so I was ready for the weirdness, and this time I forgot about the weirdness. I started training as soon as I got back. That was interesting. I do high-intensity training. Speed work. So I came back the day after I got back. I was doing that, no problem. It's as if I just gone on holiday or something. A bit weird.
I'm glad you said that. I think you just answered the question of Olutin, who tweeted in, how were you able to run 27 marathons in 27 days? So I'm going to elaborate on this question just a little bit and ask you, is this the hardest thing you've ever done? Because I know you've accomplished some feats in your life.
Yeah, I do think this is the hardest thing I've ever done. I didn't think before. I mean, I've run more marathons before, but I had to do a double marathon on the last day. When I finished the first marathon, I just had to keep going, and I had to keep a steady pace of 7.5 kilometers an hour. So I ran for 11 hours and 5 minutes to do 2 marathons, and the last hour I had to increase my pace because we were behind schedule. So that was the hardest. But I did it for Nelson Mandela. Tribute to Nelson Mandela, 27 years in prison. So I thought I could do 27 marathons, 27 days. We've helped raise about £2.3 million, about 3-point-something million dollars. About $3.4 million. So yeah, it's a good amount. People have been very generous, and I'm happy I've done it because I failed to do it. I attempted it 4 years ago and failed, and this time I got it done.
You met Nelson Mandela. What was that moment like? What was that meeting like?
That was amazing. As I was talking before on the warm-up online, it was Neil Armstrong was walking out. He was sitting at a table, and I was going in, and I watched Neil Armstrong land on the moon, 1969. I was in Bishop Stortford in Britain, sitting there watching as a kid. So, but I didn't actually meet him. I don't know what he wouldn't have known me. I would have just said I saw, and so. But Nelson Mandela was great. His short-term memory had a bit gone. He was in his 90s by that point. But his energy, he was very charming, and he was saying, and I met the Queen of England, I met the Queen of the Netherlands as well, and who is this and who is that, and come and bring them in here. So he was in full command of his charm. Great.
Wonderful. Eddie, sit tight for a moment, because we're going to check in with Nora, Izzah, Anwar, and also Glenn Greenwald, but we'll come back to you. So, I wonder if you can remember, back in 2014, when we had Nora, Izzah, Anwar on the show. Here's a little reminder. Take a look.
Oluwatobi says, if you eventually assume office as the first female PM, what would you want to be remembered for? We'll make that your closing thought.
That I love doing what I do, and that I'm only here because people trust me.
Izzah, I have an alternative reason for you to be remembered for, and it's here on Vimeo.
I'm gonna kill you. See you after this, outside.
It's a good way to die.
I'm gonna kill. Astaghfirullah.
She's a mum of 2 cuties.
Someone kill me now.
She's an MP.
Guys, switch off. Go.
She comes from a very important family in Malaysia. Izzah, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you so much. It's great to have you back. I survived that interview. It's nice to see you here.
I know.
You're currently campaigning and you're causing some trouble. So I'm just going to hand that straight over to Malika and just going to explain the kind of trouble you've been in.
Exactly, Femi. We're actually lucky to have Izzah on the show today because you were traveling recently to a remote part of Malaysia. And this is a question we got about that travel. You were denied entry to the Malaysian state of Sarawak. And so Suraj wants to know why. What happened?
Well, I'm joining about 24 other politicians in Malaysia, mostly from my party and the opposition, who have been denied entry into Sarawak. I'm the election director of the party, so I was quite surprised because the chief minister actually stated last week, if Nurul Izzah asks me nicely, and perhaps he added on, doesn't sing in my state, I might allow her in, right?
Yeah.
So I wrote a letter and I was expecting to be allowed in because the campaign period ends on Saturday. Unfortunately, I was deported right back. So I don't know. I have no idea. Perhaps it's because of my singing. They might have watched the show in 2014. I'm not sure, but I believe it's more to do with blocking. It's an affront against Malaysia's democratic practice. I think it's really unfair, but what can you do?
I'm looking at these headlines here. Malaysian state bars lawmaker Nora Izzah Anwar from campaigning. And the headlines go on and on. Nora Izzah Anwar will only accept pardon, not parole. And this is for your dad, who's currently serving a sentence. And as you explained and your family explained, for politically motivated reasons that he was put into prison. But you're always controversial. Is there any time when you're just sort of lying low, there's nothing, you're not in the newspapers? You always seem to be in the newspapers.
Oh my God, Femi, that's so funny because I'm just a simple, I graduated as an engineer.
Yeah.
I mean, look at my clothes, I'm really a boring engineer. But I don't know, somehow the Malaysian government, or perhaps the lack of space accorded to democracy in Malaysia, it just somehow pulls me into this vortex. Yeah. And I'm somehow creating trouble. So it's funny that you say that because I found myself in many controversies. But perhaps I should just run a marathon like Eddie and just try to cool it off.
You were looking horrified when Eddie was describing running the marathon.
No, I wasn't horrified. I was impressed.
Oh, okay. Have you run any distance ever, Nurul Izzah?
Yes, when I was having labor pains for my 2 children, I think that was the longest marathon.
Oh my goodness, okay, a whole different kind of everything going on there. All right.
But no, I'm a very bad runner, so kudos to Eddie.
Okay, Glenn, I want to go to you now because we've gotten in a couple of questions about your work and how it relates to something that's going on in the United States, which is, of course, the election campaign that seems to never end. This is Alexander, who wants us to talk about the death of investigative journalism and how it's affecting the 2016 Democratic race. So that is a huge topic. It could be a show on its own. But I am wondering your brief thoughts on that and what you think the state of journalism is and how it is playing into the campaign that we're seeing here in the U.S.
Unfortunately, investigative journalism doesn't really have much of a relationship to or a role in how the American media covers presidential campaigns. In part, that's the byproduct of what people like to read and what media outlets discover become popular. And in part, it's what the interests are of the journalists who cover these races. There's very little discussion of what these candidates have actually done in their lives. There's some, but not much in terms of the substance of their policy positions in the past or involvement that they've had in controversial issues. It really tends to get covered partly like a horse race. A lot of analysis about who's in the lead, who's not in the lead, what someone has to do to get into the lead, the way a horse race is talked about, whether a horse in the middle of the pack can make it to the #1 position by the end. And then the other part of it is sort of reality TV. There's a lot of focus on the personalities of the candidates, who seems to be kind of likable, who's not very likable, what traits of theirs make them that way. And there just isn't a lot of substantive discussion about what they're likely to do once they're in office.
But Glenn, where you're based right now, which is in Rio in Brazil, politics there is, let's say, epic to say the least. We've been covering Brazilian politics in the last couple of weeks here on Al Jazeera. I want to show you something on the laptop. This is The Intercept, and this is Glenn Greenwald. He actually speaks to the former Brazilian President Lula da Silva in Portuguese. Stand by to be impressed. Have a listen to this.
Existe crença comum no Ocidente que o PT é parecido com os partidos da esquerda, por exemplo, como na Bolívia, ou Venezuela, Cuba, Equador, e que o senhor e Dilma querem colocar o Brasil no mesmo caminho. E também estou ouvindo muito isso aqui no Brasil, entre brasileiros. Isso é verdade? Quais são as diferenças principais entre o PT e esses partidos?
Não seja injusto com o PT, pelo amor de Deus, porque o PT tem muita ligação com o SPD alemão, com o Partido Trabalhista inglês, com o Partido Socialista francês, com o Partido Socialista espanhol. O PT tem muita relação.
Glenn, that is so impressive. You're doing a hardcore interview in Portuguese with the former president of Brazil. How different is the prep when you're actually working in not your own mother tongue?
I think it's more impressive for people who don't speak Portuguese because they can't hear either my hideous American accent or the multiple grammatical errors that I'm making that I cringe when it gets played back. It seems really fluent and perfect if you don't actually speak the language, but actually that was one of probably the most challenging interview I've ever had to do. In part, it is really difficult to talk about a very sensitive political crisis, which is underway in Brazil, a very complicated society with a really explosive political crisis. And, Lula is one of the most fascinating and skillful politicians on the planet. I mean, this is somebody who was born into extreme poverty. He didn't learn to read until he was 10. And then he became the president of his country, the 5th largest in the world, and led it to this extreme growth and prosperity. And so obviously when you have a life like that, you're pretty adept at doing lots of things, including fielding hard questions. So the fact that it was then in my 3rd language made it all the more difficult.
Third language.
So I definitely did a lot of work before that.
Yeah.
And I slept for about 4 days after I was done.
I know, it's a surprise. Okay, 3rd language. Eddie, I know you do stand up in multiple languages. How many languages are you now up to in your stand-up?
I do stand-up in French and German. I've just started Spanish.
Right.
So, but I'd like to ask Glenn, so had you been living in Brazil for some time, and so your Portuguese was at a certain level? Because it sounded at a certain level. It wasn't like day 2 that you picked up a book or something. That obviously you were somewhat up to speed in that language.
Okay, so first of all, Eddie has run 27 marathons in 27 days and is on his 4th language, so I think we're obviously feeling a little bit bad. But yeah, I've lived in Brazil for 11 years, and so, but I haven't done a lot of work here, so it's a big difference to speak it fluently in conversation versus, you know, doing a formal interview where lots of people are listening. And so even though if you're comfortable in the day-to-day language, it's still a much bigger challenge to have to use it formally like that.
Are you
No, I totally agree. I have just going to say I have done interviews because I'm going into politics in French, a bit in German, but more in French, and especially over the phone. Actually, that's the nightmare. If you ever do language over the phone, hopefully no one's filming you because you just can't do hand signals, and so you just start sweating. It's the hardest thing. But you know, that sounds pretty good. It was impressive. Even though I didn't understand the Portuguese entirely, I can guess it from my French, and I can get the sense of it.
Okay, so Eddie, you mentioned you're going into politics. This question might make you sweat a little bit more because it's a direct question. But Glenn, I know you have something to say on this as well. So this is a video comment we got from Tom Hardwood, and it's about Brexit, the British exit, something we've covered here on this stream. I want you to have a listen to it, Eddie.
Hi, Eddie. In the past, you strongly supported Britain joining the euro, saying we'd be economically left behind if we didn't join it. What we've seen since then is that Britain's done all right economically, and the euro has led southern European countries to crash and burn, and it's been devastating, particularly for young people right across Europe. I was wondering if you'd changed your view on the euro, and if it's made you think again about the political project of trying to create a federal Europe.
Eddie?
In answer to that question, I didn't say what he said about the euro. I took more of the Gordon Brown's position that if it seemed financially right and sensible for us to join, then we should. I was positive about the idea, but I was quite happy to be led by Gordon Brown on that. But this is not a question of that. Brexit is not. This is a question of whether we are inside Europe and able to change Europe and make things better for Europe, or whether we run away and hide from Europe. Europe's going nowhere. It was set up to stop the killing that happened from Alexander the Great to World War II, 2,500 years of murder that we did to each other. And since then, there hasn't been a major war. There's been one war in Europe, and that was down in the Balkans, and all those countries have chosen to come into the EU. There's a lot of people, well, everyone, there's a lot of people think it's a wise idea to stay in Europe, and it's better for us financially, for jobs. The American president thinks it's a good idea. The head of the World Trade Organization, IMF, head of the CBI in Britain thinks it's good. The Prime Minister of Norway, that's not in the European Union, says if you want to change Europe, you've got to be inside the European Union to do that. So that's what I think. I think it's a situation there that we need to go towards rather than run away and hide from. I feel we should stand up for our place in Europe rather than run away and hide.
So, Femi, can I ask Eddie a question?
Please go ahead.
I'm just so interested and perplexed, really. Why are you still interested to be in politics? Because it's a completely different experience for me, partly forced, partly, because we're stuck in this conundrum. But, for you, what's the main factor driving you to be part of this crazy world, in my view?
No, it's a good question because you get waves of hatred coming in. People sort of are quite positive towards me, but being a transgender person, I came out 31 years ago, I have had waves of hatred thrown in my direction. So to get that in politics, which is the sort of thing, if you go into it, people will shout nasty things at you. So I'm okay going through that. But I do like people. I actually like people. I think most people are great. Extremists, they can all go away. You can use a stronger word for that. But I think the vast majority of the world, 98% of the world, are all live and let live people. And I think we've got to be working towards a world where all 7 billion people have a fair chance. All 7 billion people have a fair chance in the world. We've got to learn to live together and work together in some shape or form in Europe. And Europe has to work. If Europe doesn't work, then I think the world won't work. And I just feel I have done things in different ways. I have run 70 marathons in my life and raised about £4 million. I started performing on the streets of London. I now play at Hollywood Bowl. I perform in French, German, and I've started Spanish. Then I want to do Russian, and then I want to do Arabic.
We're just going to kill ourselves, Eddie, because we're just not worthy to be in your presence. Can you just take a pause?
No.
Take a pause from the greatness.
I'm just energetic. It's just I'm doing something. One life, live it. I'm just living it.
All right. Okay. So You don't have a movie made about you yet. So, okay, Glenn, this is where you can kind of maybe one-upmanship a little bit on Eddie, because there's a movie coming out. It's an Oliver Stone movie called Snowden, and it's kind of based on some of the investigations that you did that brought us Edward Snowden. How much were you involved in that movie? Were you advising it? What's your input?
No, there was a film released in 2014 called Citizen4, which won the Academy Award for Best Documentary, that was about the work we did together in Hong Kong. And I was actually very involved in that, especially because the director of the film, Laura Poitras, who's my colleague, filmed it and then edited it, and so I was really involved in that. The film that Oliver is making is sort of a biopic of Edward Snowden, although it does cover the work that we did together in Hong Kong. There's a separate film that's being made at Sony based on the book that I wrote that's more about the journalism that we did as part of working with Snowden. So I haven't been able, no place to hide. So I haven't been able to, I wasn't really able to work with Oliver's film because my studio saw it as sort of a competitor, but I'm supportive of it. I've heard it was great, and I like a lot of the actors in it.
I'm going to play a little bit of the trailer because I want to show people who plays you. So we have Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He plays Snowden. And then just see if you can work out who plays Glenn. Have a look at this.
I just want to get this data to the world. Hey. I feel like I'm made to do this. And if I don't do it, then I don't know anybody else that can. This is everything I have. They're gonna figure out what I've done.
Did you access an unauthorized program?
The government knows that we have these documents now.
Zachary Quinto. Goodness me, that is you, Glenn, right?
I guess.
The resemblance is
uncanny. At least in
uncanny.
that scene, it's sort of like this very shrill, kind of hysterical version of me. Hopefully that's not how the character is presented the entire time. But yeah, Zach is a really smart guy, and he's a great actor, so I trust he did a good job.
Izzah, who would play you in the movie of your life? Your life would definitely make a movie. Who would play you?
I don't know, Femi. I mean, I hope someone as interesting as you. It's tough to say. I mean, I don't think I've gone through enough experiences to play me. But I do hope someone makes a movie of my father and the history that the reform movement went through in Malaysia. Because we've had so much whitewashing of what Malaysia has gone through, and I think it's interesting to see not just Anwar Ibrahim per se, who spent more than 11 years in prison, but really of all the opposition politicians who have been part of our history. I think they merit attention, and I think I'd like to echo what Glenn said. I mean, they shouldn't just be good looking, they should be very good at acting and really capturing the mood, the zeitgeist of that particular time. Although it's if you look as good as Zachary, I think Glenn, you should still be happy.
Right. And did you notice you didn't even call him Zachary? It was like it was Zach and Oliver because they're mates of Glenn's. So I'm going to wrap up for now because we're going to take you online. Eddie, what's the next thing you're going to do, just in a sentence, so that we know what your next project is?
I'm campaigning for the United Kingdom to stay part of Europe.
All right, for the Brexit, or not for the Brexit. Izzah, what's the next thing you're going to do? What's your next project?
We're going to try to win as many seats in the Sarawak, a state in East Malaysia's state elections. It will not be easy. We are facing a new chief minister, but again, it's one of the poorest states in Malaysia, and we'd like to make some meaningful change. So all the best to my local candidates doing their bit to change the future of Sarawak.
I'm not sure you can ask an investigative journalist what's the next thing they're going to do. Can you tell us? Give us a little sneak peek, Glenn?
I mean, there's just this political crisis in Brazil that's so fascinating in so many ways, and there's this huge question about whether this young, thriving democracy is actually going to survive. It's clearly being attacked by lots of different factions, and so I've been able to do a lot of journalism here that has made an impact because they have a really concentrated media ownership, and I want to continue doing that.
Glenn Greenwald, Nurul, Izzah, Anwar, Eddie, Izzard, it's been a pleasure having you on our anniversary stream at 5 show. We continue marking our anniversary on tomorrow's programme. See you soon. Take care, everybody. Hello again, this is the Streams Online Post Show. Let's get back to our discussion. Remember, we've got Glenn Greenwald, Nurul, Izzah, Anwar, and Eddie Izzard as well. We made it.
I have a question.
Yeah, go on. Go for the question. Yeah, Eddie.
I got another question for Glenn.
Yeah.
Sorry, Izzah, I've got this. This just one. I want to tour Central America and South America in Spanish, but if I come to Brazil, can I play? I shouldn't play in Spanish. I do believe that would be like an insult to the country because it's Portuguese. But can I play in English, do you think, in Rio de Janeiro?
Actually, you know, it's fascinating. People who come to Brazil and speak Spanish, and a lot of times, you know, public officials from Latin American countries do. People who speak Brazilian Portuguese can understand roughly 90% of it. Not very many people speak English, so actually Spanish would probably be your better language.
Oh, right, and they won't find it an insult that I'm coming in the wrong language?
No, I mean, you can make a little joke about it, but they definitely will understand a huge amount of it. There's such similarities.
Okay, thank you.
I liked that you asked your question in there, got the answer. So now I'm sure that our fans in Brazil will be happy when you come, Eddie, because we're also getting tweets of people asking when you're coming back to the States. So there's a lot of that online. I want to shift gears just a little bit here because we got a video comment in that I'll direct to you, Izzah, because it's someone you might remember from a previous show. This is Julian Tan.
Happy 5th anniversary AJ Stream, and hi Izzah. It's been almost 2 years since our first AJ Stream episode together, and how different yet not so different Malaysia has become. For a very long time, corruption in Malaysian politics has been an open secret, especially amongst Malaysians. But the last 2 years have seen this become not so secret through the international lens. The pillars upholding our democratic institution are under siege, and there's an increasing sense of helplessness amongst our Malaysian youth. Where do you see Malaysia heading? Where do you see Malaysia in the next 2 years?
So it's a big question there, Izzah, but of course I know our other guests can probably relate because corruption is not something that happens only in Malaysia, but where do you see that investigation, particularly, of course, one he is talking about is one that involves the Prime Minister. We've covered it here on the stream. Where do you see that heading?
Well, I think Malaysia right now is at the focus of world attention, mainly because we're at the heart of a financial scandal that traverses many countries. I think the Prime Minister and his prized 1MDB investment setup is being investigated by more than 5 countries. And it's what's unfortunate when Julian mentioned, you know, what's changed since 2014 until now is things have really deteriorated to a point. You see what's happening in Brazil. There's, you know, that move to hold the president accountable. But in Malaysia, I mean, there is no way we can actually, you know, even to the point of bringing the Prime Minister accountable for his actions. He's the recipient of a $700 million personal donation from Saudi Arabia. And a lot of the money that 1MDB, this financial investment set up, they've accumulated up to 50 billion, you know, Malaysian ringgit of debt. But the issue is this: there's no short-circuiting the failure to strengthen democratic institutions. I joined politics in '98 when the financial and political crisis of 1998 took place. And the fact that you're not righting the wrongs, you're not really addressing the issue of the weaknesses in the judiciary, the usage of the abuse of the media, as well as political persecution, then you're going to have a situation where as long as you're Prime Minister, you control every other area of democracy and the different agencies. And so for me, 2 years down the road, I think things are going to get slightly worse. I think we need to persevere. We need to hold our positions and actually be prepared to face darker days, whether economically or politically. But we have to continue the struggle.
So, Izzah, you said something there about strengthening democratic institutions. Glenn, we got a comment here because Izzah did this. She did the work for me. She linked this a little bit to Brazil. So this is a comment from Hadim who says, Dilma Rousseff's impeachment looks a lot like a coup, but I'm looking from pretty far away. Is it?
I mean, I've sort of avoided the question about whether it's a coup because ultimately it's a semantic question of what you think a coup requires. There are no military tanks outside of the presidential palace ready to drag her out by force, which is what a lot of people think of when they hear coup. But what certainly is true is that there's an attack on the fundamental mechanics of democracy, because her party, the Workers' Party, which is a fairly left-wing party, has won 4 straight national elections going back to 2002. And there's been a huge amount of money on the part of Brazil's oligarchs and the right wing to try and defeat this party, and they've lost 4 straight times. And essentially what they're now doing is Dilma is extremely unpopular because there's a severe economic recession. People are suffering economically. She doesn't have very many political skills or much charisma. And they're now trying to exploit her lack of popularity to remove PT from office, to basically achieve what they haven't been able to achieve democratically, and just take them out of office and install somebody from a different party who could never on his own get elected, who's extremely unpopular himself, and who ironically is very tainted by and implicated in the corruption scandal. So whether you call that a coup or not is as I said, kind of a side debate. What I find more significant is that the fundamentals of Brazilian democracy are being systematically dismantled in front of not just the country, but the world. And this is a country that had a coup in 1964 when a left-wing government that was removed. And it seems like some version of that is happening again, albeit a prettier and kind of more palatable version of what happened before.
It's really interesting because I looked on The Intercept today and it had a story about the mayor race in London. And Eddie, you said in 2020 you were either going to run as a Member of Parliament or for the seat of Mayor of London. Do you know yet which one it will be? You were absolutely sure it's going to be one or the other.
Well, I hope it's Member of Parliament. I'm encouraging people to vote for Sadiq Khan in the election. I hope he gets in. You see, really, what I want to do is I want to be inside the world of politics, and I think Izzah's situation in Malaysia is much harder than ours in the UK. So I could understand if I would probably be thinking twice and 3 times before leaping into the world of politics in Malaysia. But I just want to be in the world of politics here. I do want it. I do come up with new ideas and different ways of thinking. So whether it doesn't really matter for me what part of the world I get into. I want to know how the whole thing works. So that's the thing. So Sadiq Khan,
I have a
hopefully he'll
question
get
for
elected
Eddie.
this Thursday. Yeah.
So I have a question for Eddie about Labour and politics in the UK. Obviously, I think one of the most fascinating stories in world politics over the last couple of years happened in the UK when this really shocking result of this insurgent candidate, Jeremy Corbyn, who had always been on the fringe of the party, became the party's leader, and it caused this kind of earthquake in domestic politics in the UK. Lots of people think that he's bringing in all this new energy, all these new members into Labour, and ultimately will strengthen it. And other people think it's apocalypse for Labour, that he's so tainting the party with extremism that they'll never win another election for many, many years. What's your view on that?
Well, my view is he won in a democratic way. It was unusual, but hopefully democracy can be unusual, unexpected maybe is a better word, like that. I think that's the strength of it. You know, we're talking about things getting locked in with corruption, things get locked down and nothing can move. This is something moving. My politics are more towards the centre. I'm a radical moderate. I do radical things with a moderate message. Jeremy is more to the left of me, but we're a broad church. We have to be a broad church. Think of the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. They're the two, either one of those can get into power, but broad church in the Conservative Party. They've got their right wing of their party are off with the Brexit, and the centre right is all saying, no, we need to stay in, and it's a more sensible idea that way. So that's what you have. You have a broad church. That's how big parties work. I think it's very interesting. But I like working with people. So hopefully, I mean, I'm going for election to the NEC. I'm putting myself forward to be voting in the National executive committee if I get elected, and I'm going for Member of Parliament hopefully in May 2020. So we will see what happens, but it's new energy, it's a different energy, it's not quite my politics, but some of the things I agree with, some I don't necessarily agree with. That's good politics, isn't it? I think that's interesting.
We are going to wrap up, but I love the fact that our eclectic lineup had areas that literally crossed over that you could actually discuss with each other. Thank you, guests, for that. We're just going to check back in with our online community before we wrap up and say thank you.
I'll share 2 tweets with everyone. This is Faiza, who termed today's show as the Star Wars Canteen, the gathering place for characters in the Star Wars movie of all backgrounds. That's what they likened this show to. But of course, that is a good thing. Adrian here writes, great conversation happening on AJ Stream, so thanks for being part.
Eddie, Izzah, Glenn, it's been such a pleasure bringing you all together. I would love to do it in real life beyond Skypes and remotes and studios. That would be some party, but thank you for being part of our Stream at 5 party. Really appreciate it. Take care, everybody.